I love how it gives you the option to leave when it's like recording in progress, leave meeting
Right.
or confirm. Like, I'll stick around.
Do you hear that loud thing that tells everybody that it's being recorded? It's like
Yeah.
a feature that's just started in like the last month that they've been so kind to add on to let everybody know that recording all of this content. Well, good to, yeah, I already got 14 people on. Awesome. Good to see everybody. Yeah, I hope everybody's doing well. Let me get my chat box open. Yeah, cool. I just want to give everybody a couple more minutes to sign on before we get into the questions. But yeah, it feels like it's been a minute since we've done one of these calls, which is rather refreshing for me because these are always a challenge, I think, for me, public speaking and whatnot. Even though we've done, I don't even know how many now, 50.
Lots.
Maybe more. Yeah. Drew, good to see you.
Yeah, man, good to see you too. Again, since I don't know, I feel like I'm so used to, I guess, seeing y'all twice a week that it feels like it's been a month since we've gotten to catch up and see each other.
I know, right? Like, you know, the truth is our lives are so busy sometimes. Like last Monday, the best thing that I could possibly have done was cancel the Zoom call because that extra hour that I got back in my day was like a night and day difference for my stress levels. And I'm not afraid to do it. We love you guys and really like to do these calls, but sometimes we have to prioritize our mental health and well-being. 1 minute.
Well, it's kind of like you said before that we're kind of running low on questions. So I feel like taking a week off really helped supply us back 100% with a lot of really awesome questions.
Oh, I know. So look at this.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I love that you guys print them out. I always just pull up the Google Doc.
I'm not as good as reading off the screen as I am off the paper. And I tend to take notes just in case some ideas come up. Maybe I'll write a blog post or a newsletter about something. Because a lot of these questions are actually really thoughtful and are helpful for us. Sometimes as coaches, you know, you've talked about these topics so many times, you reiterate them every day in the logs with your athletes. And so you kind of just like, it's easy to gloss over them. And I think sometimes for me, I take some notes, I print it out. I'm like, oh yeah, like this topic, you know, there is more to this. Maybe I can elaborate on these things a little bit better. I think that helps sometimes improve the way that I communicate on these things. Yeah, everybody has I think their own process. Yeah. Zoe, how you doing? Are you awake?
Whew, we made it.
Zoe produced her podcast yesterday well into the evening hours. And I think might be a little foggy today. Yeah. Plus Bowie has just had horrific stomach issues. Has been going to the bathroom every half an hour.
No.
She got spayed.
And it's been a voyage.
It's been a 3-day odyssey.
Oh, look at Ellie. Yeah. It's Ellie Mae's birthday. And look
oh
at
my God, that is the
oh my God. Ellie.
That's so
the
funny.
queen.
Bowie, I would pick her up, but she is too hot to handle right now. She's wearing a cone. She has the cone of shame on.
Bowie.
Yeah.
Oh, Ellie.
You're not really supposed to pick her up because her stomach.
I love her sparkly crown. Oh Can we sing happy birthday to Ellie? Is that weird?
I want to take Ellie out clubbing in Aspen for her birthday.
Maybe a little weird. Awesome. Well, yeah, maybe we'll get started. We've got some pretty, I would say we've got some pretty serious topics today.
Let's hit it.
Bowie, watch it. She's wearing this cone and she she has no concept of the cone around her neck, and she just rams into
She
things.
keeps getting stuck.
She's just ramming my leg with the cone right now. We don't have a very big apartment, and we're in the middle of packing to move in 2.5 weeks. And so there's quite a lot of stuff around, and she's just like, you know, over and over. It's kind of funny, but it's also a little bit like, all right, figure it out. Stop.
Not a
that.
great problem solver.
Right? Dogs are supposed to be incredible problem solvers, but we're still developing.
She's sedated, so that's probably part of it.
It might be. All right. Where to start here with all of these questions? I'm gonna start with an easy one, because yeah, it's just good to ease into things. And I think this question is really relevant. We're probably going to talk about it for 20 minutes because that's just what we end up doing on these Coaches Corner calls. All right. If I run on a trail that is populated with a lot of mountain bikers, do I stop my watch when I let mountain bikers pass by? If there are too many bikers, I feel like this really interferes with my training. Such a good question, especially about pausing the watch. Yeah, who wants to take I know the answer to this, but I want to hear it from the other coaches. Who wants
I
to
don't know if there's like a right or wrong answer. I just keep your watch on. Like, it's like you don't stop and start. Blah, blah, blah. Like, that's crazy. Just keep your watch on, make it an honest run. I mean, if you're stopping and starting constantly, you're like, that's when like the GPS gets wonky, your mileage, your mileage is off, your time is off. And then people on Strava are like, oh, their moving time was this, but their overall time was this. Like, I wonder what they did. Or like, people just don't care.
Yeah.
So just keep your watch on.
Yeah. I feel like if you feel compelled to like, if you're like super anal about stopping your watch in scenarios, then maybe there's like potentially too strong an attachment to the numbers. That being said, like I'll have athletes, like if they're running with their dog or they like don't like if they'll, fully sit at a crosswalk for several minutes without stopping their watch. What you want to convey is the most accurate representation of the effort. Like that is what you want. So like if you're, I don't want people like stopping and stretching during their runs. I want you to run as continuously as possible, because if you stop, it's kind of like hitting reset on the aerobic system, and then you might go too hard and then you'll stop. And so like the best way is kind of to just like find that consistent effort. To answer Alex's question, I personally pause my watch at stoplights because I feel like, depending on how long you're stopped for, that does give the most accurate representation. But like, again, don't get too bogged down. Don't get too obsessive. Try to be accurate without like, again, going to the numbers for some sense of like exterior validation.
So I think, and before, maybe Drew or Kylie has a comment on this, but I think a lot of athletes also, they want to pause their watch when they are walking down on their recovery from their hill work. And they do that because when you walk down the hill, your average pace for the workout is going to be different than if you were running down that hill. It's going to look like you were running slower. And a lot of people don't want to put that up on Strava. Again, an accurate representation of the run. It's just like, forget about it. Use that as an opportunity to develop a healthy relationship with those numbers. Like, part of your workout is to walk down the hill or jog slowly down the hill to recover. And it's an accurate representation of the workout when your average pace per mile effort for that run is slower as a result of those recoveries. Like, don't pause your watch for that.
And also, why? I feel like if you're that concerned with the numbers, take off your watch.
Yeah.
Like you're just going to drive yourself crazy. It is not that important. Who cares who's looking at your Strava or what time you run or what pace you run? Who cares? Nobody.
The only thing I would say is sometimes I give my athletes like total time for running. And I personally get that from David sometimes. So if it's like a light that's going to be a really long wait, I might, I'll probably stop my watch. But like if it's one mountain biker, I'm not going to stop my watch. If there's like a long line of mountain bikers, I probably will, though, if it's like a time-based run. But I agree, like not focusing on the numbers, but if it is like a 40-minute run and the stoplight takes like 8 minutes to like turn or something, there are some long stoplights, then I'm gonna stop my watch. So
yeah, I think that's an interesting thing. Again, like, yes, if it's going to be a long wait, but how long are these waits actually? Like the stoplight that goes across 133 on the run that you, me, and Zoe often run is 45 seconds. And it feels like it's a lot longer, but I timed it. It's like 45 seconds. That's not that much time.
Yeah, but like it feels silly to just keep your watch run. Like,
but it doesn't matter because
it really doesn't matter. Do what feels right for you. But if you are like, whenever an athlete comes in hot to the log and they're like, this run would have been faster had I not hit this stoplight, I'm like, this is a mental red flag.
And to be honest with you, if you pull your numbers off of Strava and not your watch, it doesn't take into account that 45 seconds anyways. It just does your moving time. So, look at actually what you're submitting to your coach.
What we're saying is it doesn't really matter. Try to find a route that doesn't have hella mountain bikes, though, because if you are like stopping a ton, that's just like not that efficient of training.
Remember that run we did in
oh my god,
Moab, where it was like every 3 minutes we had to stop for like 10 mountain bikers.
Or that one on in Boulder.
Joder Ranch. So that was kind of the direction that I was going to go. Hearing the question is that if you're specifically doing a workout that's not just like going out running easy miles, it's really important to pick your route based off maybe the amount of times that you think you might have to stop. If you know that there's a really popular mountain bike place in town, probably not the best place to go do like a tempo workout or something like that. And so, or we talked about stoplights in the chat. Probably not a good idea to do, again, a very specific workout where you're going to have to stop 3 or 4 times and wait for a light for 45 seconds. And so picking your route is really important, and that can help kind of mitigate a lot of the stopping to begin with.
Yeah, don't stop. Like if you're doing a workout, like an interval workout, you need to not stop, because that will that will change the nature of the workout. It changes the stimulus. If you stop in the middle of a tempo, it's like, again, you're hitting reset in a way that's like really counterproductive. So
yeah, try to find uninterrupted, and I think something that I got used to over the winter was just repeating the same uninterrupted section of road or bike path for my workouts, and not being like afraid that it's like, well, this isn't the perfect loop or something, like this isn't my normal route. Like, just find a zone where you can get your your recovery in, and then also your workout in the same stretch. And if you have to like double back, I think that actually is totally fine. I do that now. I have like a 1.5 mile section of like nice, flat, moderately technical trail that I do my workouts on in the summer. That's not that much trail, honestly. And I just double back on it, and I time it so my recovery, I can just double back. And then you have all that space to do the workout in. And this is the same when you're running around town. You don't want those interruptions. The purpose of like your workout day is to really get that workout in and to focus on, that quality time, that intensity. The miles that you do before and after are all just like about being chill and just like preparing yourself and are cooling down. So like try to like run to that specific place where you can get the uninterrupted time in, execute the workout there, and then just ease your grip a little bit and then run back. And if you have to cross over a highway where you have to wait at a light for 1.5 minutes, you can pause your watch if you want, but just know Strava will just take away that time waiting anyways. So it's all good.
Yeah, try not to stop, but if you do, be fine with it.
Yeah, I try not to stop. But, on a long run, you might want to take a photo.
Or like if you're with your dog, like we get it, but
We already did the dogs and workouts
Yeah.
call.
Great,
Refer to
yes.
that one on the dog stuff, guys. Kristen nailed it, by the way, if you haven't listened to that call. And
Or
you like
just
to
run
with
with
your
Ellie.
dogs.
Ellie is like a way more efficient runner than I will ever be.
As long as she's wearing that sparkle crown. I feel like if you're running with a dog that's wearing a sparkle crown, you automatically get all the KOMs on Strava.
All the KOMs.
Doesn't matter how fast you actually run, you just like win at life that day.
I'm surprised that Kylie hasn't put like a Sunto on Ellie and started to get some
Ellie
dog
would
segments
have
out there.
all the KOMs. She's like the fittest runner in the valley.
50 miles a week.
Just Ellie, all the Van Horns. It would just like every leaderboard would be like Sean, Kylie, Ellie.
All right, let's go on to our next question. Oh man, I'm gonna save this one for last. That is very. I have to take a few deep breaths before reading that one. Okay, here's another like a great kind of yes, as the author of this question writes, a fundamentals question.
Ooh.
Perfect. If the scale of an easy run is 1 to 10, 1 being barely making an effort to move forward, what is 10? Like, where does an easy effort stop? Because sometimes it feels better to go faster. I always guess I'm running the easiest runs at about a 5, but honestly, that's very slow. I know time isn't the goal, but I see people way bigger and way older than me that do 10-minute miles, no problem. I guess I'm wondering if my calibration is off. Again, the kind of the meat of this question is, you know, like what is easy running? How do I gauge and calibrate easy running? I don't know where this athlete got the 1 to 10 rule for easy running.
Wait, is that so? I think of running effort level on a scale of 10. Is this
the
just
entirety.
easy? The entirety.
Yeah. To me, I'm reading this question as my easy
Like, so
effort starts at 1 and goes to 10, and then
But 10 is still technically easy.
10 is like aerobic threshold.
Okay.
No, guys, I think one of my athletes submitted this question, and it's on a scale of 1 to 10 for all runs.
Okay, so like 10 being
if
max
1 is
effort.
easy and 10 is max, like
cool. Okay.
Yeah. Just to clarify, sorry. Write that in the Google Doc.
Yeah. Who wants to? I could do it, but
I just want to say that this is one of those kind of like fun contradictions of running. The fitter you get, the easier it is to run slow. A lot of times, if you're newer to running, sometimes finding that easy pace won't feel that great all the time right away because your biomechanics are not that efficient. So you may feel that it is easier to run faster, but you are still increasing the impact forces on your body, and you still might actually be starting to switch away from that usage of glycogen and starting to get towards the like higher end of that carbohydrate burning zone. So you might actually be calling on energy systems that would class that run as not being purely easy, even though you may feel that you need to run faster because it feels better or something. That's something that we see pretty commonly with athletes. What I always say is easy doesn't mean the fastest, like you can go while still finishing the run intact. Easy means easy.
Yeah.
I also point out real quick that at the bottom of each of your logs, there's an effort guide that TJ and Zoe have taken a lot of time in typing up that is so useful. If you're unsure of what easy is, hate to break it to you, easy isn't a pace. You see someone out running 10-minute pace, who cares what they're doing? They might be busting their ass, or they might be like literally putting along. It's super easy. It's all on the person. We train on perceived effort. What does easy feel like to you? What does hard feel like to you? And it's going to be different for every person. But if you're unsure of what easy is or what moderate is or what hard is, please reference that effort guide at the bottom of your log. Even if you have to reference it every day before you start a run, just so you have you're reminding yourself of what that run should feel like. That's a super useful tool.
Yeah, thanks, Drew. Thanks for the shout out on the effort guide. Yeah, we put a lot of time into building that. Obviously, if we want to just do a quick run through, What if you're, looking at that effort guide and it goes 1 through 10, 1 through 4 is almost, I mean, you're walking 1 to 3. 4 out of 10, maybe 5 out of 10 is going to feel a lot like a recovery run. 5 to 6 out of 10, is really starting to get into the kind of middle range of your aerobic, kind of easy running energy system. That, like, in your easy running encompasses like 60% of your aerobic capacity, your full capacity, from 0 to VO2 max. I mean, that is your biggest energy system. So you have a lot of room to work there. On days where you feel good, you might be picking up the effort a little bit and running, closer to aerobic threshold, a steadier run that might feel like 6, maybe up to 7 out of 10 for a really well-trained athlete. Again, that still kind of encompasses those same feelings. It's like 3 to 4 sentences conversational. If you've got any question about that, just try to sing the lyrics to one of the songs you're listening to out loud. If you can't get 2 or 3 sentences out, you're probably running too hard. Again, also kind of something that I'm thinking about is like, what does the resistance on your legs feel like? Like an easy run doesn't feel like there's resistance on your legs. Your stride needs to feel quick and smooth, not like you're running uphill, or you're running with a heavy pack on. The faster you go, the more resistance there is on the legs. 8 out of 10, we're thinking like getting closer to lactic threshold. 9 out of 10 and up is, your maximum possible effort. And again, like when we're doing hill strides and things like that, you're getting close to 9 or 10 out of 10. A lot of athletes on the team, the more advanced you are, you can probably hit that 10 out of 10 max effort and maintain good form. But for a lot of athletes who are, a little earlier on in the process, it's going to be harder to maintain good form out of like your VO2 max effort on a hill stride. So just dial it back a little bit. All of this stuff is about like not perfecting, but like making progress towards the neuromuscular adaptations that make running feel easier. And so that means, you're always thinking light, quick, smooth strides, light, quick, smooth strides, easy runs, workouts, like the whole time. Like that's got to be something that is in the back of your mind. I hope that makes sense.
To address Denzel's question, we don't really recommend nasal breathing. There's like super mixed evidence on that. And like, I can't go up a flight of stairs with only breathing through my nose. It's like pretty much, it's a lot less determined by fitness than other factors. So don't stress about nose breathing.
I have another, this isn't necessarily based on the number, but using the talk test as well. Like if you're running easy, you should be able to hold a complete conversation without like breaks in the conversation, like if you're running with a friend. So that's another thing that I use to explain to athletes. Like you should not be breathing very heavily on an easy run. You should be able to hold a complete conversation, complete sentences.
Yeah, I tell my athletes the same thing, or I tell them like, if you're running and you cannot belt out an Adele song and run at the same time, you are going too fast. And it's so true. Like, I always wonder too, like when I'm doing my easy runs, like I will start singing Hamilton show tunes or, start playing like air guitar or something just totally ridiculous to like zoom out a bit. And then, I don't know, start singing Adele and be like, okay,
don't be afraid to sing out loud. I love to do that. And it's super funny because I'm not a very good singer. And I'll just come around a corner. I'll be feeling it, singing, making sure that I am in my aerobic, easy zone. And there'll be like 5 people there like, what the heck?
I'll be like singing WAP and I'll turn a corner and I'm like, oh, hello, family.
It's all part
but
of
like
the
if you have any desire to stop at all, you're running too hard.
Yeah Breath rate, talk test. You shouldn't feel like you're trying to like push a tire at your local CrossFit gym when you're out there running. The resistance on your legs should be pretty much non-existent. Light, quick, strides,
Light, quick strides.
conversational effort.
You can have light, quick strides without sprinting.
Yeah.
Without running hard at all.
It takes time though. Again, you know,
as you get more efficient, running slower gets easier.
Yeah, it's tough at first because your best form when you're newer to running generally expresses itself when you're running faster. Your best biomechanics.
Yeah, and that's why we do strides, is to practice the best form, and then that form will trickle down so that you get more efficient at all speeds and effort levels.
I hate that trickle down thing because it just reminds me of something else. All right, let's go on. We're really doing well today. We might do more than 3 questions. This is great. All right, Zoe.
Oh,
this is a question that specifically addresses something that you wrote on the blog. Okay, I recently went back and read the blog post Zoe wrote titled "Emptiness as Opportunity." It talked about how extra time and space can aid in her mindset, a wholesome life, and even training. Now, looking at the opposite, as many people begin to transition back to old routines, how do you recommend being able to still enable some of the concepts discussed in this post? Is busyness development, or is there opportunity in space?
Yeah, I think this is so key. And I think one of the big takeaways for me from the pandemic generally is making better decisions for myself, and like really being able to set better boundaries. Because when we both started working from home, and like we're given the opportunity to make more informed choices about what we do with our time, I learned a lot. I think, maybe the year before the pandemic, I raced a ton, and I was picking races that I didn't necessarily have a strong emotional attachment to. And I definitely like ran, like 50Ks, like pretty big efforts for things that I was kind of like lukewarm on. And I ended up finishing that race season. Like, I just remember being in the middle of a 50 miler being like, yeah, I'd really rather be skiing. Like, this is not that fun anymore. And I don't want to get to that place. That's not a good place to be mentally, and it's not a good place to be physically. So I think, for me, and this is something that you can see in running, or just like, TJ and I love our 8:30 bedtime. Like, you're not getting us out of our house on a weeknight after 7:00 p.m. It's just not going to happen. So we've really learned to not say yes to things that we don't truly 100% want to be at. And I think we're both getting better at just saying, like, I'm going to be asleep at that time. Like, I'm going to save this space for me. Saying no to things and not necessarily feeling like you have to justify it or make an excuse, because I definitely struggle with like wanting to please everyone and do everything and be seen as that person who does the most and juggles a lot of things. And being seen a certain way is a really shitty reason to make decisions. Whereas feeling good and protecting your space and the things that matter to you, even if like that's just reading or wanting to watch Netflix, like those things are really important, and you shouldn't feel the need to fill your life with things that you aren't 100% on. So for us, like, we started making the decision, like, if there was any part of us that didn't want to go to a thing or go to a place, like, we're not doing it, because, there's a lot of demands placed on our time and energy, and we're not going to get close to spreading ourselves thin.
Why? Why don't we want to spread ourselves thin?
Because when I show up to something, like whether it's, a phone call with an athlete, or, doing a project at work, or, playing board games with someone, if I'm going to be there, I'm going to be 100% there. There's not going to be one part of me that's like on my phone or thinking about how I'd rather be in bed, or like questioning that decision. I'd rather have FOMO than like be out past my bedtime. Like, it is more worth it to me to miss out on opportunities than it is to overextend myself and then, have to like fully pull myself out of something down the road or overcommit. I would much rather set boundaries than overcommit up front.
Yeah, and I think that you mentioned a lot of great stuff here. I kind of want to address the space aspect to this question too. As you're somebody who's starting to meditate more, you're working more on mindfulness practices. And as somebody who's been meditating since 13, I think we both kind of have a different maybe perspective on what that space is like. And for me, when I hear about space, I think about recharging. I think about taking kind of time to reset, maybe for reflection, maybe for unproductive things like just rest. I think we've started to really redefine what rest actually is. Rest isn't just a physical thing where you put your legs up the wall and you really focus on like feeling good for your run tomorrow. Rest is also, there's a very mental and emotional component to this where you kind of recharge your brain power, your power to be present with somebody, your power to be able to engage in the things that you're doing. And for me and for everybody, whether you're aware of it or not, that stems kind of on this mental and emotional side. Like you can't physical your way through all of life's challenges. They require brain power, they require energy and attention, and that isn't physical, that's mental. So the opportunity I think that exists in space from on a day-to-day basis is that you're able to recharge, right? So that way when you do go into the things that you're doing, like Zoe mentioned, you are actually present there. Your focus isn't going off to someplace else, or you don't feel drawn out. So you're able to give your best. And I think that that's really important. Often we see a lot of examples of people who are maybe making different choices, and those choices kind of lead them down a path where, oh, I'm pushing through. And then, there's a huge breakdown because they never kind of took a step back to like empty, level things out to find balance. And from a training perspective, that space, Zoe also kind of alluded to, like, I was racing a lot and then I decided to like change that strategy and focus on, maybe having my races be several months apart and to have more space for development. And the space aspect to the training is that when you're racing, every 3 months, or having a focused race every 6 months, whatever it is for, kind of for you. And as I think as people get more engaged with this process, become more confident in just doing a few efforts a year and then supplementing that maybe with some like B or C races that don't have quite as much of the attachment side to it. You start to see that you're able to actually focus on some of the training and you get the benefits of having those extended training blocks. So your entire process is work towards this goal, taper for that goal, rest after the goal, maintain, taper, race. That cycle that repeats itself doesn't really lend to any growth. It probably lends to stagnation over time because there's no period of like focused stress, right? Where it's like, let's really build strength on hills for 4 weeks and then use that strength to develop, faster running and do, 8 weeks of economy work. And like, boom, okay, I just described 10 weeks of training. Well, you can't do that if you have 2 races within that 10-week time period. You can't even do that if you just join Microcosm today and have a race in 3 weeks, in a week or a month or in 3 months, which is sometimes fine, and we're happy to help athletes get through that first race. But I'm always trying to reinforce like that space is an opportunity for growth. Space in your daily life is an opportunity for reset, which allows for growth. If you're constantly pushing, if your stress bucket is always full or overflowing, it is extremely difficult to get the adaptations that you need to continue to grow. And we often, we coach a good amount of people. We have a lot of people in this community and have been doing this for a while. And you start to really see the patterns where if it's always like push, blow up, push, blow up, it's very difficult to get out of that. So like stay in front of it, give yourself space. I always recommend, at least 10 minutes a day, every athlete, mindfulness and meditation practice.
Yeah. And I mean, and just in an exercise, from an exercise physiology standpoint, if you're not taking your rest day as seriously as you take your run days, like the rest day is when your body actually adapts to the training. So if you are running without resting, that's like eating without digesting, because your body is not actually able to make the changes that we are trying to stimulate through training if you don't rest.
Yeah. And I would say, you know, for anybody out there who has worked, like gone into the pandemic, like Zoe and I did, had, you know, I had a very strong meditation practice, and I had very defined boundaries that existed in my life. And then the pandemic really broke a lot of those down. I started to work unacceptable hours that made me very tired, and kind of maybe brought down the quality of my coaching, I think, a little bit. And as the pandemic, you know, continued to unfold, it created an opportunity for reflection and refinement of those boundaries, which are, I think, leading me down a path of like better coaching and optimizing kind of how I do things. And sometimes, you know, as we move back into like, we're commuting, we're going to more events, like the opportunity to go adventure every weekend is starting to exist again. And like that kind of, that it's not a step back. It's just, we're moving forward now back into a direction where, you know, some of these old things may start to come up again. You know, I think it's important for people to be mindful of that your boundaries, the things that you've developed over the last 6 months or a year to, you know, to work on yourself, and those things don't have to go away just because you might be returning to the office, or, you know, you might be racing a bit more. You know, if you take the time to reflect on the choices that you're making, the consequences of those choices, how things fit in a day, and what you're prioritizing, I think you are going to be able to maintain some of those boundaries, if not continue to build more and to grow.
Yeah, less is more in all things.
I would love to hear from the other coaches, because I'm sure you guys have gone through, you know, similar stuff. You know, Drew, you've often mentioned a lot about, you know, taking that space, not necessarily as recovery, but the idea of using it as like preparation for the training that you have coming up. I really like that concept. You know, Kristen, I know you're balancing basically, you know, coaching full time at this point, but also working really hard for Zwift. And Kylie, I mean, gosh, with your business and everything, I'm sure that you have some input on this as well.
What you guys discussed really kind of hits the nail on the head. For me personally, space, obviously, physical, I guess, refresh, if you will, mental refresh. But after like running specifically, to kind of bring it back to running, like you mentioned, space to, I guess, recover from a run. Like TJ, you talked about like spending that time, or Zoe, you talked about spending that time recovering. Otherwise, like you don't, or resting. Otherwise, you don't benefit from your runs. I like the concept. It makes sense. And it's obvious, really easy to think of things that way. But one of the things I like to do, one of the things I challenge my athletes to do, is to not think about what you've done and how we need to recover from what you've done. But like what TJ said, like, it's done. Like what's happened in the past, forget it. We're looking forward. We're looking at new workouts. What do you have to do on your rest day? What do you have to do to prepare your body? Not recover. I mean, it's just the same thing, right? Just different words. What do you have to do to prepare your body for the next day? And that can be running, that can be work, that can be family life, that can be whatever you need it to be. But taking that space, taking that time to prepare, not necessarily recover. So I know it's the same thing. It sounds stupid now that I'm saying it out loud, but I hope that makes sense.
No, yeah.
I love that concept.
Frame your rest and recovery, like trick your brain. Like, I get it. Rest is hard, especially like depending on what your context is and what your relationship to exercise is and has been in your body. Like we're all coming to this with like a lot going on. So however you need to get your brain on the rest train, like do that.
Totally. Yeah. I'd love to hear from Kristen and Kylie. Kylie, go ahead. Putting me on the spot.
I was just trying to think about the best way to answer this. For me, I've had to really especially it's been an evolution with my business and coaching and balancing all of the life things. But recently I started, it sounds simple, but I started creating like a more blocked out schedule for myself that where I have like my 2 complete like days off from work, and then I literally have like a morning routine built in, and like have all of these things where I can give my space or myself a space to rest a little bit throughout the day, which I wasn't doing before. And so I think, you know, in regards to, I've been trying really hard to set more boundaries throughout this year, and things that have helped me are just really taking the time to just like block out that time for myself, and then it kind of forces me into doing that for myself. So I don't know if that helps at all, but for me, it's just been more about like setting those boundaries and setting up a schedule for myself and blocking off that time to like rest and recharge and not over scheduling.
No, I think, and I do want to hear from you, Kristen, but just to reiterate kind of that concept that Kylie just kind of spoke about, I think is just so important, right? Like if you're a really busy person, if you have, you know, you look at your Google Calendar and you've got boom, boom, all of this stuff happening, you know, one of the biggest things that I recommend for athletes is like schedule your run, schedule your recovery, you know, block out your day and build routine that way, because it's going to be very hard to like fit in that time if you notice that your schedule just fills up. And that is something that Zoe and I have definitely done, because the demands on both of our times is just like enormous. And like especially for Zoe, who is, I don't know how many jobs you have, a million?
Just two jobs. It's not that many jobs.
What about the podcast?
That's technically
3 jobs. So anyways, I think that, you know, that scheduling thing can be really huge. Okay, Kristen.
And not glorifying people who do too much.
Exactly.
Like it's not cool to be drawn out. It's not cool to be a slave to the hustle. It's not cool. Don't do it.
Kristen.
Oh, I think that taking all this into consideration, I mean, I went through journalism school and I guess still am working in the advertising industry for the last 10 years, writing. Like one of my first jobs in Los Angeles after graduating from Oregon was like, I don't know, working 70, 80 hours a week, and it was totally normalized. And so I was working with a good friend of mine who I worked with and knew from college. And I remember I had plans for Thanksgiving to go back to Oregon to surf and run and hang out on the coast with my friends. And all of a sudden, you know, the higher ups are asking us to change a campaign for, I think it was Lexus at the time. And we were all on salary. So it was like, we're not going to get paid any extra to be there longer. And it just like the over glorification of like who can work longer means they're a better employee. Like that has never flown with me. And so I think that with the pandemic happening and working from home, and incorporating 2 full-time jobs plus just, you know, other passion projects, or like getting more into gravel riding and figuring out training for myself for running. I have a hard time saying no to people. And like, I think like Zoe, I'm very much a people pleaser. And the way I am perceived is important to me. And I never want anyone to feel like I'm letting them down. So setting boundaries has been something that has been really hard for me, especially like you guys are saying in the pandemic. So with Zwift, I you know, that's a full-time job. Coaching is now a full-time job. And I think finding the balance has been more of a creative endeavor than a burden. And so it's very much like I like to I like to liken it to when I was in college, I had running, the U of O, and I had the journalism program. And the two were so separate that if I got tired of one, I could focus on the other. If I got tired of the other, I could focus on, the first one. But I think with Zwift being an athletic brand, and encouraging people to train, like it's just an opportunity. I like to view it as an opportunity for myself to hone in on my coaching voice, because it's all about encouragement and bringing the community together and getting people on their trainers, involved in different aspects of the community, whether it's running on a treadmill, which is no one's favorite thing to do, but now you can do it on Zwift, and you can run all these cool routes in Watopia or through Umezi. And so it's just a cool way to flex different parts of my creative brain. And I'm grateful for that, because it makes me more well-rounded, makes me a better writer, makes me a better coach, makes me a better human, makes me a better athlete. So I think just kind of like pulling out the silver linings, and practicing gratitude for the amount of time that I do get to invest in all of those endeavors is really important to me.
It's awesome. It's such a full expression of who you are, to be able to have all of that, and a wonderful opportunity. But I think with that, a big challenge, right? Like, how do you find the balance? Where do the boundaries exist? When does the workday end? Like all these questions, those are things that I ask myself quite often. And I think that, something that I tell like every athlete when I have a call with a new athlete that I'm thinking about bringing onto the team, your identity, your running identity, your athletic identity is just like one piece of this larger part of who you are. And it's a complicated process to like have a bunch of goals there, and then to also have like this other part of you here, that's like the part of you where you're like a partner, or you have your other job that you're like really pushing in, you're very career oriented, or you're like also on top of that pursuing like higher education, or you have like, there's so many pieces that make up each one of us, right? And I think it's often overlooked sometimes that like boundaries have to exist sometimes within each one of those things, in order for them to all kind of coexist. It's not like we have split personalities, but you have different avenues, each person does, that they like to pursue these things. Some are more creative than others, and it's very cool to just hear about like how your perspective on balance and figuring it all out is like a creative endeavor. I kind of got out of what you said. And
yeah, I guess my answer wasn't very direct, was it?
no,
Well,
really
that would
your
imply
answer.
that there is an answer, right? Like,
Yeah, and there really isn't. I mean,
great,
it's
but
different every day. The only consistency that I have is, there's not a lot of consistency, which keeps things fun. But also, like, that 6 a.m. alarm goes off every day, and I'm like, oh my, I'm just not a morning person. But the one consistent thing is like between 8:30 and 9 o'clock every night, my phone's on airplane mode. At 5 o'clock every day, I'm out the door running with Av or biking with Colin, or like I have to structure my days to get something done specifically for myself in the morning, because I don't know. I just believe that like you can't pour from an empty cup. And so if you're not taking care of yourself, you can't show up for other people. You can't be there for your friends. You can't be there for your athletes. And I just think that like, it's not selfish to put yourself first if it means bettering everyone else around you.
100%. And I think the other thing that I hear is like, this isn't something that, is perfect. Like we're never, I think, achieving like a perfect state of balance or the perfect like boundary making ability. We're all like humans. So like we do want to
I've always believed
people.
that the concept of balance was something meant to prevent women from achieving everything they want.
I'm so glad you
Hot take.
interrupted me to say that. Yeah, that was a very hot take. Sorry. Anyways, I think, just trying to ease your grip on it a little bit and thinking more about just making progress in these areas, rather than trying to achieve some kind of like perfect state. That you don't need to like, I guess, transcend this concept or something. It's something that like you work on every day, you get a little bit better at it.
One thing I like to remind myself of too is that like I have 2 nephews and a niece who mean the world to me. And I know that from their perspectives, they're 10, 5, and 3. And in the scheme of things, I mean, Drew, you might be able to attest to this as well, as like your presence is everything, so if you can channel that energy into every relationship you have, like that is powerful. And the amount of time and the amount of focus and energy and just presence that I give to these 3 kids, I mean, it transcends everything, thinking about them can get me through the worst part of my day. Remembering a silly song that my nephew came up with after, farting at the dinner table is just like, those things give me life. And as silly as they are and as random as they are, they're the sorts of things that keep me going on really hard days. And it's all about perspective. I mean, we're all only here for a set amount of time, and the impact that we make is like, no one's guaranteed anything. You're not guaranteed 100 years. You're not guaranteed to be there for every birthday or every baseball game, but like the ones you get to go to, like it's pretty cool to just be all in when you can be.
Yeah, and that's just like the whole idea of this, right? Like everything I think that we can all be kind of striving for in a way is you set those boundaries so you can be really present with the people that you love, with the activities that you love, even with the things that feel like a grind. Just being able to be present. And if you're strung out, tired, pouring from an empty cup, as you said, that makes it a lot harder to be there. And when you're not there, you're really missing out on a lot of like the nuances and like fine colors that exist in those experiences. Oh man, I think that
if you liked this conversation, you'll hopefully like today's DNF episode.
Yeah, I was thinking a lot about that. So I think that, people really will.
Ironically created from a state of massive disbalance.
Isn't that funny? I actually think that you handled the process really, really well, Zoe. It was a really hard week. And for people who don't know, there's a lot going on with your job and stuff right now, and there's quite a bit of stress.
And I worked like through the weekend at Western States, so it's like 14 days on, which like I would, but I did take 2 full days off running, which is like huge, and my body feels great. And I think it's just about reiterating how awesome that, like, and I was genuinely like a little nervous to take 2 days off because I'm going into a race next weekend, and it's never like, I love the confidence of I always have good races after I have just like shit long run builds, or like miss a build, or like just have some blow up on a long run. And while I never strive for that, it gives me confidence that I can have really less than perfect training and still compete and enjoy competition, and like not stress as much about the particulars of training.
Yeah, it's like that Ted Lasso quote I've been reminding myself of a lot that you brought up the last time we were on the call, Zoe, the giving 60%, 1,000% of the time. And honestly, like since you've said that alone has gotten me through like 3 of the hardest workouts of my life, where I've been like, just give 60% because, just 1,000% of the time. So,
yeah, exactly. Anyway. Just like show up all the time.
Mm-hmm. And showing up for yourself is cool. I mean, like
football is life.
Yeah, football is life. But I think that just like being able to rely on yourself to show up in a way that no one else can for you is like, that's a superpower. More people need to like harness that, I think.
Yeah.
Well, we'll keep harping on it as much as possible.
More Ted Lasso quotes.
In a healthy way, indoctrinating.
So excited
people.
for season 2 to give us more quotes to draw from.
Yes.
Oh man, that's coming up. Like we're in July.
August.
Oh my God.
It could be like
Ted Lasso
could be
month.
like next weekend.
July
first
22nd.
No, they have to make us wait a whole month for this. Come
We've
on.
waited like a year.
Oh,
We've
boy.
fully watched season 1 3 times.
3?
I think I
only
have two. There's actually a
Three.
podcast with Jason Sudeikis and
Brene Brown and the head writer.
yes, and Brene Brown and the head writer that I've listened to probably like 3 or 4 times on long runs where I'm just like, Brene is just like so psyched on Ted Lasso, and she has basically like turned these characters into humans, and she like is very attached to Ted Lasso and Rebecca and Keely, and I am too. So it's cool to like hear someone of Brene's like intelligence and like stature just be as psyched for this as I am.
I'm so glad somebody brought up Brene Brown, because I feel like this whole topic of boundary setting, I've gotten so much more comfortable about figuring out how to set boundaries in my own life by listening to her kind of way of communicating and articulating the importance of balance. And I think that if anybody out there is struggling with feeling like, you know, one of the reasons why we don't set balance or set boundaries and we have issues making decisions that are in our own best interest is often because we have a fear of like how we're going to be judged for that. We wonder if we're going to be considered enough as a result of like prioritizing ourselves and like the way that we're valued in the eyes of other people. I think as a coach, you know, every coach on this call, you know, has had a situation where they probably had to set a boundary with an athlete and really kind of gritted their teeth and had a hard time with it, thinking that they were maybe letting somebody down, or, you know, setting a boundary where somebody else had an expectation of you that you were finding it hard to reach. And I, at least personally, I've found that her podcast and a couple of her books, Daring Greatly was a really good one. I think that's what it was called. Have helped to kind of like contextualize and allow me to like understand why it's important to set boundaries, why they are a healthy part of life, and why we should be kind of striving to do so. Yeah, I know Kylie, you're a big fan as well, and so is Zoe. So anyways, guys, you should check that out. Can you turn that off?
Yeah.
I guess we've kind of reached the natural end here as our vacuum cleaner powers on. I hope that you guys are able to hear me. We are not having a call next week. We have a race, but we will do a couple more of these questions on Monday. If you guys are enjoying your holiday, don't feel obligated to be on the call, but we will be here because the rest of this month is really busy for us. So there's a possibility we won't be able to do as many calls as normal. And we want to make sure that there's just plenty of new conversation out there for everybody to listen to. Hope you all have a great weekend, and yeah, adventure. Don't forget to adventure imperfectly.
Imperfection.
It's the best.
It's the only option.
Thank you. Thanks to all the coaches as well for contributing. And if you guys have questions, please send us questions. No question is too small. We really love these conversations. Bye.
She's looking at full down dog.
I know.